Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Training Talk Live right here exclusively on Personal Defense Network. I'm Grant Cunningham, and this is the show where we talk about you, about your life, and how to protect it. In the next hour, we're going to explore how you can prepare and equip yourself to face that worst case scenario and keep you and your family safe from harm. Now, if you've been here before, you've heard me say that we don't do religion or politics on the show. Yay! And as a result, you're not going to hear any sort of fringe commentary or wacko conspiracy theories, nothing like that. Just reliable information that you can put to use right away. It's the reasonable and responsible approach to self-defense and personal security, and I hope that you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, if you're the kind of person who likes reasonable and responsible, do me a favor, share this show with your friends and your family, your co-workers, your neighbors, relatives, in-laws and outlaws. I'd really appreciate it. And, I think they'll appreciate that you thought enough of their personal safety to share this show with them. So I would appreciate very much if you get on your social media and share this with everybody. Just get it out there and tell people all about Training Talk here on Personal Defense Network. So welcome back, everybody. For those of you who are rejoining us that have been here before, thank you for coming back. And for those of you who are new to the show, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate that you took the time out of your busy schedule and decided to spend some of it with us here at Personal Defense Network. And I really do mean that. All of us, we have a limited amount of time on this earth, and I'm glad that you're here spending some of it with me. That humbles me greatly, and I do try not to waste your time and fritter it away. So welcome and welcome back. It's been an interesting week. I hear there was some sort of a baseball game on this week, something like that going on. And and of course, we've got an election coming up next week. So lots of stuff happening in the world, lots of things happening here at home as well. I've seen lots of articles about self-defense in the news, lots of people using their lawfully owned firearms to protect themselves and their families, and just a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm going to start tonight, as I usually do, with, yes, Grant's rant. And I said there was a lot of stuff in the news, and this is one of those news items that came across my board today or yesterday, I think it was. And it has to do with a tragic incident actually down in California at a sheriff's office in California. And it seems that there were a couple of deputies there who were talking, depending upon which news report you read, they were talking about their backup guns. And one officer took out his backup gun, apparently to show it to the other deputy, and shot the other deputy in the chest, and the deputy died, unfortunately. A tragic incident, and as it is, I'm sure they knew each other. They may have been really good friends, and I can only imagine the pain that the fellow who did this is going through. But there's something that we can learn from this, because these sorts of things do happen, and they don't need to happen. And it comes down to, frankly, safety rules. Yeah, those pesky little safety rules that we talk about all the time. And I wish that the sheriff down there had gone on the news and used this opportunity to talk about firearms safety, because a lot of things had to go wrong for this this poor young deputy to get shot in the chest and die. So let's talk about the safety rules that we use anytime we're handling firearms. The first one, of course, is that we always keep the muzzle pointed in a generally safe direction as often as possible, or as much as possible, rather. Now, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by a generally safe direction? Well, a generally safe direction is one in which, should the gun fire, that it's not going to hurt anybody. That's it. What we're concerned with is hurting other people, and that means ourselves, our colleagues, the other people in class, the instructor in the class, whatever that may be. We always need to keep the gun pointed in a generally safe direction as much as possible. And what is a generally safe direction? Well, or what isn't? Well, generally, this is not a generally safe direction. other people are generally not safe directions. Any place that you really don't know where the bullet's going to land is probably not a generally safe direction. So that's the first rule. The second rule is that we're going to keep our finger off the trigger, preferably indexed on the frame of the gun above the trigger, whenever we're not shooting. And in this rule doubles up the first rule. If for some reason you happen to momentarily swing the muzzle across your foot, for instance, as you're drawing the gun, it happens. That's why we say as much as possible. If your finger's not on the trigger, if it's indexed on the frame above the trigger, outside of the trigger guard, you can't fire a shot. So they backstop each other. And the final rule that we talk about is simply keep in mind that you have something in your hand that if you use negligently or irresponsibly can injure or kill you or somebody else. And it really can. And this is sort of the big picture rule, which is Rob Pincus, our executive director here at Personal Defense Network, calls it the big picture rule. I like to think of it as encompassing all those other rules. You know, you go to the range, you see the list of 15 rules there. This encompasses the other 13 rules that are on that list, making sure, for instance, that you've got the right ammunition, caliber of ammunition in the gun, but even down to things like, not handling guns when it's not appropriate. Now, I don't know why this deputy was handling his gun in the office. I have no idea, but that seems to me probably not a proper place to be handling a loaded firearm if you don't need to. This rule takes care of all those kinds of things, making sure that you know where your bullet's going to land, all that kind of stuff. The third rule puts you into a safety mindset, makes you think about what you're doing with that gun beyond just the rules of not pointing it at someone and not having your finger on the trigger. It goes beyond that and helps you think about safety in a much broader sense. I think it's probably true that had this deputy thought about these three rules and followed them, the other deputy would probably be alive today. And I think this is something we can learn from this incident. Again, I'm not piling on the deputy. I can only imagine how he feels right now. But for the rest of us, think about the safety rules whenever you're handling firearms. One, keep the muzzle pointed in a generally safe direction as much as possible. Number two, keep your finger outside the trigger guard, preferably indexed on the frame above the trigger if the gun design allows it. And finally, keep in mind that you're handling something that has the potential to hurt or kill somebody else. That potential is always there. Keep those in mind. And again, I really wish that the sheriff down there had taken the opportunity to go on the local media and news media and use this as a teaching moment. Unfortunately, the sheriff down there said, well, we don't know how the gun fired. Yeah, we all do. The trigger got pulled. And that is the culmination of not paying attention to safety rules when you're handling firearms. So don't be that guy. And again, our sincere sympathies go out for the deputy's family and all the other people who work in that office down there. Tragic incident that again did not need to happen. All right, we've got a great show tonight. And we'll get to this in just a second. But first, I want to talk to you about the free Personal Defense Network weekly newsletter. This thing is awesome. The Personal Defense Network weekly newsletter. This is live, folks. Weekly newsletter is just an incredible source of information. Comes out every week, free in your mailbox, and usually has one of the latest videos that we put up or one of the latest articles. In fact, the weekly newsletter is how I learned about the article that my guest tonight wrote. I may not have seen it had it not been for that weekly newsletter that comes in my email box. That's how I keep up on all the stuff at Personal Defense Network. And believe me, we've got tons of content here. We've got thousands of videos, hundreds of articles, and the free PDN weekly newsletter keeps you abreast of all that great information. Now, if you're watching this on the PDN website, if you look down, there's a little link down there that says sign up for the free weekly newsletter. Just click on that. Put in your email address, you're good to go. Anytime you're on the Personal Defense Network website, there's a box. There's usually multiple boxes that say stay connected. Just put your email address in there and you'll get the PDN weekly newsletter. There are hundreds of thousands of people who get this newsletter, and I am not kidding. There are hundreds of thousands of people who get this every week in their mailbox and get this great information. And hey, it alerts you when this show is on. Yeah, it tells you when Training Talk is on. It tells you when Rob Pincus's live shows are on, his monthly live show. Great resource and easy to get on, easy to get off, but sign up for the free Personal Defense Network weekly newsletter. So, as I said, one of the things that I learned from the PDN weekly newsletter a while back was a couple of articles that my guest tonight wrote for Personal Defense Network. My guest, his name is Clint Macro, and he wrote two really great articles. We're going to talk about those articles tonight. Clint is a businessman and civilian firearms instructor with over 34 years of shooting experience. He's an instructor in multiple disciplines and teaches other instructors and regular students alike in safety, awareness, conflict avoidance, defensive techniques, and marksmanship. His company, the Trigger Pressers Union, that's a great name for a company, isn't it? The Trigger Pressers Union is located 45 minutes south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So welcome to the show for the first time, Clint Macro. Good evening.
Hello, Grant. How are you, sir?
I am terrific. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight to talk about your articles.
Oh, thank you for having me here. It's a real honor to be on your show.
Well, thank you. You've got, I'm sort of humbled by his studio there. Here I'm in my rather plain office. He's got this awesome studio that he works from. And Clint, if you would please, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into the defensive training business.
Oh, well, my training background actually started when I was a kid. I just was around guns my entire life. I grew up in the mountains of central Pennsylvania, where, a gun is something you get before you get a bicycle. And it's something that I was always around. And I worked my way out to California. I was working in the music and film industry out there. And I befriended a dear friend of mine who was an armorer, and he would run guns for the movies and, set up blank adapt firearms and use them and teach people how to look like they knew what they were doing when they were on camera. And he would have me go out shooting with him when he would train the actors, and I helped him help teach his girlfriend how to shoot. He says, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. You ought to become an instructor." And I said, "How do you do that?" And he says, "Well, the NRA certifies instructors." And then I found a training counselor out there, and that's where I started my journey. And that was in 2008 is when I got my first certification. And I've since moved back to Pennsylvania. And when I came back here, I became a training counselor, and I've been doing it pretty much, I'd say, I spend about 3 or 4 days on the Ranger in the classroom now, and I do about 3 or 4 days here in the studio. So I feel very blessed that I get to shoot guns and listen to music for a living. So that's pretty much what I do. But as you said, with the NRA, I do all of the disciplines for the National Rifle Association. I put the classes on for students as well as train instructors to teach the disciplines. And recently been involved with the United States Concealed Carry Association with their new program, which is pretty fantastic. And Revolutionary War Veterans Association with the Project Appleseed is a wonderful program, and CMP and the hunter safety courses here in Pennsylvania. I really enjoy training people and giving them the knowledge and the skills to use firearms safely or defend themselves responsibly. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Well, great. You've got quite a background, and I think a lot of us, quite frankly, got started by going through that hunter safety course when, fifth grade or something like that when I went through it. So terrific. Now you've written a couple of articles for Personal Defense Network, and I want to talk about, hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about both of them. So we'll start with one that's really kind of interesting. I want to start with this because it's called Citizens First Responder Infrastructure. And this is kind of interesting because we usually think about infrastructure as something sort of big that the government does for us, but that's not what you talk about, is it?
No, we need to build our own infrastructure, and especially if we choose to be our own first responders and take on that responsibility, there's certain pieces of infrastructure, some devices, some things that we need to put in place. Without infrastructure, the whole plan falls apart. And there are a few basic things that if we're going to be our own first responders, we should have in place. And that's what that article is mainly about.
Okay. Now, one of the first things that you talk about is getting the concealed carry license as part of it, and you said something interesting about getting the concealed carry license, and you said, keep in mind that the CCW permits you to carry the firearm; it does not permit you to use the firearm, and I think that's an interesting distinction. What do you mean by that?
Oh, absolutely. And I probably stole that line from another instructor. To be a good instructor, you're somewhat of a good thief. Another instructor said that in the course once. I said, yeah, I'm going to use that. And it's absolutely true. The permit or the license to carry, as it is here in Pennsylvania, it gives us the right to carry the firearm concealed in public, but it doesn't give us the right to use it. And I think too often people that are uneducated on how the system works, they think it gives them, maybe a leg up, or in some cases a junior police officer's badge. Some of the horrible conversations I've had with people, and it really doesn't. All it does is it gives us the ability to carry the firearm, and actually it puts a lot more onus and responsibility on us personally if we do happen to be involved in a dynamic critical incident. That if we make it through that physical encounter, that legal aftermath, it's going to put us on a higher point of scrutiny. If we defended ourselves with a baseball bat and the outcome was that attacker ceased to exist, it would be a different situation than if we were attacked by someone and we used a firearm to make that attack stop and that attacker cease to exist. So anytime there's a firearm involved, it puts things on a different level. I think it's important that people realize that. And I'm not certainly, in my business, I want people to carry. I want people to be armed and responsibly armed and be educated. But going along with that, you have to understand the consequence of it and what responsibility you take on as a citizen that chooses to be their own first responder.
It's interesting that you talked about about the idea that a lot of people have, that sometimes the concealed carry permit, a lot of there are people out there, I won't say a lot of people, but there are certainly a fair number out there who think that does give them some sort of special privilege. And interesting enough, I was just reading a news story today, and I think I want to say it was down in Florida, not absolutely sure about that, where a fellow was in church earlier this year. Somebody who was disruptive came in. He walked over to the fellow and showed him his CCW badge. And for those that don't know, the CCW badges are things that some people buy and have it emblazoned with their carry permit number. Why they buy these things, I don't know. I think they're silly. I think that a lot of people believe that they confer some sort of authority that they don't have. But this fellow showed his badge, and all it did was anger the fellow. And the concealed carrier ended up shooting him, and is now on trial simply because it looks like he overstepped his authority. He didn't have really any authority to be doing that kind of thing. So I think that's a very illustrative news story. I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking of that story as you told that as you were relaying that.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't give us any authority whatsoever, and people need to realize that, because that case you were talking right there. Obviously, we don't know all of the facts because we're not there, or we're not in court. But most reasonable people could argue that that individual didn't need to place himself in that situation, and by introducing his junior police officer badge, for lack of a better term, he placed himself in a situation where he didn't need to be there. And when we work with students and we train instructors to work with students, we first and foremost, we're defensive firearms instructors, and part of that is that we need to exercise conflict avoidance to the nth degree. And, if we don't, we end up placing ourselves in situations where regular people who are reasonable might say, he didn't need to put himself in that situation. And if we see something bad going on, or if we see a situation that is at all unsavory or unsafe, well, then let's just leave. Let's move away. Part of the training, that we have to have restraint, and we have to have self-discipline. And I think, a lot of martial arts teaches that. And I think we need to kind of have the same mindset when we carry a firearm.
In fact, in the article, you point out that the firearm is life-saving equipment, and you even compare it to the gear that a firefighter runs into a house with.
Sure.
And I think that's a very good way of looking at it. I think Masada Ayub calls it safety rescue equipment.
Okay.
And I think that really is, we need to understand that these things exist so that we can protect and save our lives, or the lives perhaps of our loved ones. It doesn't confer upon us any police powers.
No,
whatsoever.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. If that firearm is employed, it's because we're trying to save our life or the lives of others. And, we as civilians must always think of that firearm as a tool of self-defense. It can't be used in an aggressive way. It needs to be used in a defensive way.
And there is a difference. And so we're on the topic of responsibility here. And one of the things that you mentioned in the article is the responsibility of safe storage, of storing the weapons that you have so that they can't be used by unauthorized people. And we're starting to really gain traction. I think a lot of it is because of the work that we've been doing here at Personal Defense Network, but a lot of other people as well have been talking now about safe, responsible storage, not in the way that we used to. The way that we used to was storing the guns taken apart, and the ammunition and the gun in a separate room, this kind of thing. But today we have all kinds of things that allow us to store the gun and still be able to use it as a defensive tool, but keep it out of unauthorized hands, I think. So
Sure,
you talk about that. And so what kind of secure storage do you like, and what do you recommend to your students?
I'd say I really like the company Gunbox. I met them at the NRA show a couple years ago, and as I understand it, it started off as like a ma and pa company, and they were working out of their garage, and they have these really nice, attractive looking units that you would never think that there was a gun in it. It looks like abstract art. Matter of fact, one of the ones they just came out with will hold a carbine with a 30-round magazine in it, and it looks kind of like a weird speaker system. And they work with RFID, or they work with bio, thumbprint. And the box that I have, it works very well. And anything that takes a thumbprint, they say it will hold 1 million, or however many, it'll hold 1 million thumbprints or fingerprints. And the key thing there is to make sure that you save it there, then there, then there, then there. You do a couple different prints for each finger, and then that way you have a better chance of it opening if you have to come at it at a strange angle. But I'm very pleased with the Gunbox, and I know Rob has endorsed a few different products that were sponsors on the PDN tour. When I last saw him, there was a few. Was with the company that makes the mantelpiece that drops down. I forget the name of that company, but it's a really cool product.
Walls.
Yeah, Tactical Walls. There's some really cool products there. And the technology's caught up now to where, we don't need to look necessarily at a 3-digit combination box. I mean, if that's all you have, well, then that's better than nothing. But as a defensive tool, it needs to be, of course, it needs to be out of the hands of unauthorized personnel. And, we often think of children for that, but that also could be your goofy brother-in-law, Chet, or Jim Bob, or whoever you want to call. But it needs to be accessible quickly. We talk about using gross motor skills, and when we're manipulating a firearm, we'll try and get out a key or use a combination lock in the middle of the night without your glasses on and under stress. So, having something like an RFID that opens with an RFID bracelet or a signet ring or something like that, or with a thumbprint, is going to be much better. And it is a tool of life-saving. It's a life-saving equipment. So, that Gunbox is part of the whole infrastructure. So it needs to be accessible, and it needs to be efficient. If my son's life depends on me being able to get into that box, then I had better be able to get into that quickly. But being a storage device, no one else should get in there if they're not authorized to do so.
So, so who should be authorized or allowed or given access to that firearm? You know, older children. I would think obviously spouse, but do you allow family members like older responsible children to have access to it?
I think that's pretty much a question that every individual is going to have to ask. Obviously, first and foremost, we're going to have to make sure we comply with any laws that there might be in any particular jurisdiction we find. But outside of that, I have worked with many people who have teenagers that are very responsible. They know how to use the firearms, and they've gone through, home invasion drills, and they know what to do. And if something happens to dad or to mom, they know how to get that firearm and deploy it. On the other hand, I've worked with some folks that their spouses, they didn't want their spouses near the firearms. So, they put a baseball bat and a flashlight on their side of the bed, and they're the only ones that can get into it because the spouse didn't want to get the training to be able to use the firearm, or maybe they didn't have the will to actually use the firearm and see it through. Obviously, if we find ourselves in a situation where that gun is entered into the mix and you're not prepared to use it, then that could add a whole different dichotomy to the situation. And I'm speaking specifically as if, we've retreated to a safe room, more in the home kind of situation.
Right. Right. So I've said this many times on the show that personal defense isn't always about shooting. It's not always about the bad guy. And in the article, you talked about things other than firearms that you should carry in your pockets. And I see you're a proponent of the flashlight, as am I. I carry my my
I got a
4.7s.
Your flashlight is bigger than mine, right?
I carry my 4.7 Quark Smart wherever I go. I've always got. I'm going to stick it back in my pocket here. I've always got it with me. But I notice you're a fan of the flashlight too. Why are some of the reasons that you recommend people carry a flashlight?
Well, the biggest one is so that we can see in the dark. I mean, really, that's the biggest reason for it. I mean, too often we walk out into the parking lot and it's dark outside, and it wasn't when we went in. And you want to do a little 360 around your vehicle, make sure no one's hiding there. So you pull out the flashlight and shed a little light on the situation. There are other reasons that we can use them for tactical reasons, but I think the biggest thing is just so we can see in the dark. As you said, personal defense isn't always about a gunfight, per se. And I've been in buildings when the light has gone out, when the power's gone out in the middle of the day and you're pitch black inside of the room. How do you find your way out? So I think a flashlight, just like having some type of blade, even if it's a small pocket knife, once you start carrying one, you always think, wow, how did I live my life without having this on me every day? You find a use for it every day.
And pepper spray, that kind of thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Saber pepper spray. It's pretty nasty stuff. That being said, I generally don't carry it because that goes where my extra magazine is. But if I have to go somewhere where I can't take my firearm, I put my pepper spray right in my pocket. It's my secondary tool of self-defense.
Okay. One of the things in the article that you talked about was the idea of pre-planning. And we usually think of that in terms of like home defense planning. We talk about fire drills and perhaps even intruder drills. I mean, I think we really understand that. But you also talk about planning when you're not in the home, when you're out and about. You talk about planning even then. And if you could kind of tell us a little bit about your philosophy of planning.
Certainly. Even not so well thought out plan is better than no plan whatsoever. And people will generally panic and freeze if they don't have a clue of what to do. So if we have a plan, we formulate one just on the fly, even when we walk into any new situation, any new environment. Most folks, when they go into the restaurant, they'll sit with their back to the wall and they identify the exits. Well, that's making a plan right there. You're keeping an eye on that front door. You're watching for anyone that comes through there that seems unsavory to you. And if they do, where to exit stage left or exit stage right to get out of the building. So something as simple as that is making a good plan. And taking it one step further, identifying exits, escape routes, looking where I could find some concealment, some cover, and in a new environment, looking and seeing where I could perhaps see a potential threat. Oh, there's a dark area over there. So I either need to pull up my flashlight and shed some light on the situation, or I need to avoid that area. So this is kind of the concept. And it's just making up just makeshift plans. And whenever you go there by yourself, it's pretty easy to do. But when you're with family or other individuals, you have to communicate that.
So I know you've got a family, you've got a son, and when you take the family out and you're doing things with them, go to the mall or a restaurant or whatever, how do you communicate this to them on the fly and get them on board and get them buy-in, as it were?
Well, it's just a matter of talking when we get there. Okay, we've identified the exits. We set up a rally point. If we get separated, let's meet back here, wherever here is. And one of the things I like to do is we come up with a code word for whenever we're at a new place, if we go to the zoo or somewhere, and I say, okay, if I say this, whatever that is, and we discuss it. If I say this, you need to drop what you're doing, come to me, grab hold of my belt, and let's just move, or let's run. We formulate that plan. And it's a matter of living in reality. The reality is that bad stuff can happen. And, statistically, it doesn't happen every day, certainly not, but it does happen every day to somebody. And so I would like to be as prepared as I can and have my family as prepared as I can get them whenever we're in that new environment. So just discussing it, coming up, formulating that plan, and making sure that everyone understands what needs to be done especially the code word. I think that's a wonderful thing. When I got one of my instructor certifications out in Los Angeles, I worked with a LAPD officer, and he uses that concept. That's where I kind of got that idea. And I thought, what a wonderful idea that is. So,
so your son is, and I met your son before the show, and your son is obviously of an age where he understands this. And I don't have kids, so I can't, I don't know, for instance, at what age you start talking with your kids about this kind of thing. Where do you start with them?
Well, I tell you, one of the easiest things you can do is, as most kids will enjoy watching Animal Planet. You watch lots of Animal Planet, and then you can just equate bad people to predators. And that makes a lot of sense. The predator is just like that lion, and you're a gazelle. Or, of course, the David Grossman, concept of the sheepdog and the wolf and the sheep. Matter of fact, the David Grossman has a book called Sheepdog. It's a little book for kids. What a wonderful book that is. If you have children, I recommend you pick that book up and read it to your children. It really kind of puts it into words that children can really wrap their heads around. But simply put, there are predators out there, and I'm going to protect you. So long as I have air in my lungs, I will protect you. But you need to help me with my plan, and here's what we need to do if something happens. So we just kind of formulate that plan. It's just reality. And
Wow.
equating it to the Animal Planet, watching predators attack other animals, it's helped. That's something that's helped me a great deal when discussing it.
Wow, that's actually I'm saying every once in a while I hear something new that I haven't heard before, and this is something that I had never heard before. I had never really even thought about. Like I said, I don't have children. I don't know what their habits are these days. When I was a kid, which is a while back, let's just leave it at that. We didn't have things like Animal Planet. So
We did have the Mutual of Omaha programs on PBS.
Well, yeah, but it was usually, what's his name saying, while I'm in this hut with this beautiful native girl, my younger assistant is going to go out there and wrestle the anaconda. I mean, that was pretty much how things work.
That sounds like a different show.
But no, that's actually good. I'm stealing that from you.
Please do. And anyone listening, feel free to steal it. It's good information.
Wow.
Make it your own.
That is awesome. On that note, for just a moment, I want to pause for just a second here.
Sure.
And talk for just a second about premium membership here at Personal Defense Network. And for those of you who are already premium members, you know how awesome it is. But we have two sides to Personal Defense Network. We have the public side, which is where the show airs. The show airs on the public side of Personal Defense Network, as does Rob Pincus's show, his monthly live show that he does. But on the membership side of Personal Defense Network, we have just a whole pile of exclusive content specifically for premium members. DVD length videos, special access to online courses, video collections. Of course, there are a lot of videos, premium videos that you can only access from the membership side of Personal Defense Network. But we also have this cool thing called video collections. So if you want to know everything about a specific topic, like how to deal with an active shooter situation in a public space, we've curated and collected the best of the videos and information that we've got on those topics and put that under one heading. You just click on that. There's your playlist of all the stuff that you need to look at and learn about that topic. So great learning opportunities rather. Resources is the word that I was going for. Learning resources, not recess, resources. On the membership side here at Personal Defense Network. Now, normally premium membership here at Personal Defense Network is like $34.95, I think, a year. But I'll tell you what, make a deal. If you sign up for premium membership at Personal Defense Network, and when you check out, there's a little box where you can put in a coupon code or a discount code. If you put in the code GRANT10, GRANT, the number 1, the number 0, all one word, GRANT10, you'll get your first year of premium membership here at Personal Defense Network for only $10. That's not $10 a month. That's $10 for your entire first year. So you can get in. It's a relatively low risk way to try out premium membership here at Personal Defense Network. And I think you're going to be amazed and astounded at the incredible range of quality information that we have on the membership side. Now, of course, I've been a premium member since we started that thing several years back. I haven't seen everything that we have there. There's just that much great information, and it's easy to find what you need, and you can learn all kinds of things about personal defense and personal security and defensive shooting, unarmed defense. There's some great grappling stuff there. Try it out. GRANT10, GRANT, the number 1, the number 0, all one word. Put that in at the discount code at checkout, and you'll get your first year of premium membership at Personal Defense Network for only $10. And trust me, you are going to want to resubscribe every year, because it's just that great. The information is just that great. It's just that awesome. So premium membership, only $10. GRANT10, put that in at checkout. All right, so we'll get back to our discussion with Clint Macro about some of the great articles that he has here on the public side here at Personal Defense Network. So Clint, you talk about, we talked about planning. We talked about this great idea of using animal plan. I'm still blown away by that, by the way. I think that's awesome. I almost wish I had kids just so I could try that out. I mean, well, that's that cool. So you mentioned training every day. So yes. You talk about training every day. So what are some of the ways that people can make daily progress in their defensive preparations and their personal defense abilities?
Well, first of all, you have to adopt the mindset that and accept the reason why you are using and training with the firearm. It is to defend yourself and your family. Not only is it to defend your wife and your son, but it's also to defend your son's daddy. And, one of the things that scares me more than anything is the thought of my son growing up without me there. So first you have to realize that's why I'm doing it. So that should motivate you to train every day. And as Rob talks about in the Counter Ambush book, most people can't afford to shoot live fire every day. And actually, if you look at how the brain works and how it learns things, it's probably not a good idea to do live fire every single day. So we can mix it up and mix up the senses. So, doing live fire, then do dry fire exercise. Of course, purge the room of ammunition and make sure that firearm is safe, and do holster draws into a mirror. That's a wonderful way to dry fire. You have a target, your own image that you can use, but you can also get the other side of the view and see what your technique is like. And you can really help with your kinesthetic alignment, especially as Rob talks about in his training. So doing the dry fire, then CERT pistols. Mike Hughes built a wonderful training aid with the CERT pistol from Next Level Training. And the investment of a CERT pistol is well worth the money. You can use that every day. You can do little short workouts like Mike talks about. In the morning before I have my cup of coffee, I get to do unsighted fire at light switch covers with the CERT pistol, get 50, 60 reps in before I have my coffee. And we can get that visual feedback immediately with the laser. And there's also the secondary laser that shows when the trigger's prep. So there's exercises we can use with that. And products like the LASR software. The LASR software loads on any laptop, uses any old webcam, and then we can use laser products and we can set up, call targets. So we can do kind of poor man's reactive. So it gives us another layer to the simulated training. And then on top of that, personal defense network. I mean, we can watch a video, we can read an article, pick up one of Rob's books. Combat Focused Shooting Evolution 2010 changed my entire life as far as how I looked at training. And then, of course, the Counter Ambush book it was like the dude's rug. If you ever watched The Big Lebowski, it kind of ties everything together. And what a wonderful book. So combining all those things, we can train every single day. Most people say I can't train every day because they don't have a range availability. They don't have access to the money for the ammunition. And of course, those prices can be kind of steep. But if we invest in the personal defense network subscription and a CERT pistol, the LASR software, and go to the range every couple days or once a week or whatever you can afford to do, you still should be able to train every single day. And it's pretty amazing how those neural pathways get built in the brain. I've been studying that, and I'm certainly no expert by any stretch of the imagination. But once we've had physical repetitions of say a draw stroke or a trigger press, if we then think about it and read about it and watch a video on it, we're still reinforcing that same neural pathway that's being burned into the brain. And man, what a wonderful thing the body is. So we can train every single day.
Cool. One of the things that you talked about in the article is, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, is getting the family involved in this whole thing. Because, getting the family on board, if you've got a family, if you live with other people, getting the other people in the family on board with this is important. And if you go out, certainly, like you said, using the code words, that kind of thing. But how do you deal with family members? And I know you've got some experience, at least counseling your students who have issues. How do you deal with the family members who might not want to talk about or face the scary stuff? Because this is kind of scary. How do you deal with how do you get people on the family on board when they really don't want to talk about it?
Yeah, it's hard to do, because if we push too hard, oftentimes people will recoil and they'll draw back from it, and they'll close their minds down to the concepts. Sometimes it's good to help them succumb to peer pressure. If it's a wife, if you have another friend that's a female, sometimes that helps break down that barrier. I've actually worked with a lot of females that wanted to arm themselves, and their husbands didn't want to do that. And one of the ways to help was actually the NRA Home Firearm Safety course is a wonderful class. It's a very basic safety course, but what it does is it exposes people to a whole bunch of firearms, and all we teach is how to safely unload a firearm. And what I have found is, even with some anti-gunners, I would talk to them, well, you're telling me that this firearm is something that you want to stay away from and you think is a bad thing, right? And they say yes. And I say, well, shouldn't you have the knowledge to be able to make that firearm safe by unloading it? And they'll say, well, in many cases they'll say yes. So I'll let them come take the class for free. And sure enough, we're unloading real firearms with dummy rounds. And after they get tactile interface, they develop what I call gun lust. And they turn around and they say, hey, what's it like to shoot this? And of course, once we get people shooting, then they usually enjoy doing that. other cases have been where folks have had actual really traumatic situations happen, whether it be stalkers or something, and then they finally realize, well, I do need to protect myself. So it really just depends on the individual. But my advice would be, try not to push it too hard, because if we push too hard, especially with a spouse or a child, it's gonna be harder to reel them in. What you need to do, kind of like working in the music industry, I need to try and make an individual think it was their idea to do what I want them to. So you got to kind of win them over with a little bit of honey and sugar, and see if you can get them to get the answer you want. You got to coax it out of them. And once they make the commitment, it's usually a lot easier to go through with any type of training and any plan building.
You mentioned an interesting dynamic, and I don't think I've run across this one before. The situation where the female part of the relationship is interested in the firearm, but the male half is not. And of course, probably 99.9% of the time, it's exactly the opposite.
Right.
What is it that you see in those instances that prompts the woman to seek out the training? Is there a realization that they have that their significant other hasn't had yet?
Yeah, women live in a different world than men do. And, I'm not a woman, so I don't fully understand and appreciate necessarily, what a woman goes through on an everyday basis. But I do know, working with a lot of females in my classes, you're an instructor, over the last couple of years, it's more and more the case where you have an all women's class, and it's not even what you designed the class to be. It's just women are taking these courses and getting the training. And it's empowering to them, so they sometimes want to do it to take control of their own destiny. And too often, unfortunately, it's because there's been a negative situation that's happened. I can think of one individual who she came to do a basic pistol course, and I tell my instructors this too: there's always a backstory to someone being in your class. And we were doing a single shot exercise, very, very low stress kind of exercise, and she started to cry on the firing line. And we pulled her off of the line, and me and a few other instructors sat down with her and said, "What's going on?" And it turned out that she was being stalked, and of course called the police, and there was nothing that they could do until something happened. And her husband was very anti-gun, and she was not she wasn't really an assertive individual anyhow. And she put her foot down and says, I'm going to get some training. I'm going to buy a firearm because I need to be able to protect myself. And I guess they had slept in different rooms for a couple nights over this. It was a really traumatic thing. And when she shared that with us, myself and two of the other instructors, we committed to her that we were going to help her get through this and get to a point where she is comfortable and confident and efficient with her firearm. And since then, she's now shooting 3-gun, and she's tactical and high speed, and she's actually gotten her husband to come out and shoot. And now he's actually taking training too. So it was one of those things where, as an instructor, we have to just kind of take a deep breath and smile and deal with any issues that may come up, because again, there's always a backstory. And because we invested that time with her, I like to think that's one of the reasons now that her whole family is shooting. So men, we're alpha males in many cases. And, for instance, we walk into the room and we look each other in the eye and do that man nod. I see you there, I'm here, you're there. Okay, great. It's kind of the equivalent of animals peeing on the floor and puffing their tails and stuff. But women don't do that. And so because of that, it's just a completely different mindset. So I don't think men necessarily feel that they are under that kind of scrutiny with different people. They just kind of look at it as guys being guys. But a passing glance or a word from a male to a female can be kind of traumatic and make them want to be able to empower themselves.
I think that's great, and particularly for someone who, and we do, I've certainly had those students who were the victims of stalkers. That's certainly happened more than once, and when they realize that they can be overpowered, that they can be hurt, and then seek out personal defense training, and not necessarily just with a firearm, but
Mm-hmm.
personal safety training just in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like I said, this whole idea of the civilian response infrastructure, and I think really what you've done here is kind of looked at it as a cohesive whole, and then dealt with individual pieces of it as needed. Is that a fair way of looking at this?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe so. I kind of pared it down. My original list of things was much longer than that. And actually where this started, I work with another organization, and they do legal seminars, and when I host, I'll talk about just basic firearms training. And many of the people, what made me think of this is many of the people that were there already had their carry permit, or in Pennsylvania, it's a license to carry a firearm. They already had it. They already had a firearm, but they didn't have anything that went with it. A firearm in a really poorly made nylon holster where the gun would fall out when they get up and down out of their vehicle, that kind of stuff. And so I really wanted to simplify it and pare it down and say, well, here's some of the basic things that you need. And it just kind of developed the article from there. It was actually, originally kind of a seminar piece that I would give a discussion.
Cool. Great way of looking at things, and there's a lot more in the article, folks. If you haven't read the article, do go read the article, and I'll put a link to the article in the show notes as well. So so you don't have to go looking for it, but if you just click on the recent articles tab on the menu bar here at Personal Defense Network, you'll see the article listed there. It's a great article, and check out his other article as well. We didn't get a chance to talk about this tonight, but he has a very interesting one called "The Semantics of Civilian Firearms Education," and we'll maybe have him on another show and talk about that, because that's an interesting article as well. So, Clint, tell us how people can get in touch with you, where you teach, upcoming classes that you've got, and that kind of thing.
Oh, I've got quite a few classes coming up. I train pretty much every weekend, and then a couple days during the week in many cases. And if you go on to triggerpressersunion.com, that's www.triggerpressersunion.com. And my whole schedule is up there. And I work mainly out of the Pittsburgh area, although I've been traveling to different clubs and different associations, different facilities in Maryland and in Ohio and West Virginia and in other parts of Pennsylvania. So my sphere of influence is slowly growing. And so I always tell people I have gun will travel. So if you would like me to come out and put on any type of courses at any of your facilities, I really enjoy going out and working with other folks and being at different facilities. While I have this second, if I could, I just really want to thank Rob Pincus. My two articles I have, I'm fairly new as a contributor to Personal Defense Network, and I just want to say thanks to him for giving me this opportunity to be part of the Personal Defense Network team. I'm very humbled to be here, and I thank him, and I thank you, Grant, for having me on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And I think one of the things I want to point out is that, because if you're in that area in Pennsylvania or the surrounding areas, one of the interesting things, and he sort of alluded to, is because of the fact that he's self-employed, gainfully employed, as we would say. You can do classes during the week, right? Which is kind of unusual.
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, we just opened up. Well, we're in the midst of opening up Trigger Pressers Union national headquarters, we're calling it. And it's a facility that's going to has a stress inoculation shoot house using UTM products. We have an outdoor range, and ultimately we'll have an indoor range, classroom facility, virtual range training facility as well. And we're gearing it towards instructors. It's an instructor-friendly venue. I've trained so many instructors the last couple of years. I average well over 100 a year NRA instructors, and this year I did 50 USCCA instructors as well. And they're excited. They've got a wonderful product to sell with their programs. They have people all lined up to take the classes, and then they get smacked in the face by club politics, or they can't find a range to put their classes on. So I thought I would open this place up, and people can come, instructors can come and put their classes on. So I'm looking forward to next year, and we get that ball rolling, and hopefully we can spread the gospel of safe, responsible firearms usage even further.
Cool. Well, great. Clint, thanks so much for being on. And I'll put a link to your website in the show notes as well so people can get that. And I hope we can have you on again soon.
I would love to come back. And again, thank you very much, Grant, for having me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thanks for taking the time to be with us tonight. All right. Well, we're just about out of time here, so we'll talk about a few things here before we call it a night. And first of all, of course, let's talk about our next show. As you know, we do our show training talk. Oh, gosh, I'm getting tired. I can't talk anymore. But we do the training talk show twice a month, the first and third Thursdays of every month, and our next show will be on Thursday, November 17th. And so be sure and check back with us then. We'll have a lot of great information, and we'll hopefully have some more guest experts on to talk about some specific things that you can do to keep yourself safe and develop your personal defense ability. So don't forget that the second Thursday right here, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on and the next show is November 17th. Of course, you can always find me at my site, grantcunningham.com, or here at Personal Defense Network. You can send me email at grant@grantcunningham.com. Feel free to send me email. I do enjoy getting those and answering your questions, and I like hearing the comments. Sometimes I need to hear the criticism, but please send your emails to grant@grantcunningham.com, and maybe I'll even use your question on the show, because sometimes we get some great questions that have a wide interest base that maybe some other people are thinking about asking, but aren't quite sure that they want to ask. So sometimes we'll use those as well, and we might use yours. And if you don't want to be identified on the air, if it's okay to use your question, but you don't want to be identified, of course I won't do that. But do send your questions and your comments to grant@grantcunningham.com. And don't forget about the free Personal Defense Network weekly newsletter. Sign up anywhere here on the site. There are lots of places to sign up. There's a link right here on the show page. Down below the video box, there's a link there that says sign up for a free weekly newsletter. Just click on that, put in your email, and you'll get the free Personal Defense Network weekly newsletter. Excuse me. Chock full of great information. You'll learn about when this show comes on next. You'll learn about Rob Pincus's live shows that he does monthly. So be sure and sign up for that. Don't forget, of course, the Personal Defense Network premium membership and the deal for $10 for your first year. The code again is Grant10, GRANT, the number 1, the number 0, all one word. Put that in at checkout, and you'll get your first year of premium membership here at Personal Defense Network for only $10. And boy, that is a screaming deal. It's like 72% off or something like that. Again, don't miss our next show. And I thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. And I know things are hectic, especially we've got an election coming up next week. I know things are very hectic, and I'm glad that you took some time to sit down and learn a little bit about personal defense and preparing yourself to deal with that worst case scenario. And I hope you'll join us on our next show, Thursday, November 17th, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on Personal Defense Network. And with that, I hope you have a good evening and stay safe.